Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second panel discussion. This one is on painting and relevance, hosted by the New York Studio School and Sugarlift Gallery. It's great to be back here with all of these wonderful painters, and I will introduce everyone briefly, more briefly than last time. So if you want a lengthy introduction, go look at the first recording. You can find it on the New York Studio School YouTube channel. It was wonderful and a real pleasure. So oh, that's interesting.
Oh, I see somebody.
I think we're being bombed.
It looks like it.
I'm on there.
Turn your video off.
Turn the video off. I don't know how to turn no video off.
I'm going to change her to an attendee.
Thank you.
There we go.
So in the end of our first panel discussion, as we were wrapping up, John came up with a very important question about painting's relevance. And it felt like a wonderful possibility to follow up on that question and have another conversation with everybody. So we thought it would be good to do that now. Before we get into all of that and the introductions of the different panelists, I want to introduce Cara from the New York Studio School. Would you like to say a few words about the Studio School?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Jordan. Hi, everyone. My name is Kara Carmack. I'm the head of exhibitions and public programming at the New York Studio School. I want to thank Jordan again for bringing us all back together again and all of the artists to speak on this also very timely topic, building off of last fall's conversation. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Studio School, we were founded in 1964 as an intensive studio arts program with an emphasis on perception. We've remained true to our founder's vision, a faith in the great language of art, a commitment to excellence, integrity, and serious work habits, the encouragement of an open mind, and conviction in the power of art to change one's life. To learn more about the school's programs, please visit our website or email us at info@nyss.org, which I'm putting into the chat here. We offer full-time MFA certificate and virtual certificate programs, as well as part-time options that include marathons, evening and weekend classes, and drawing and sculpture master classes. And finally, I encourage anyone in New York or nearby or coming to visit to stop by the Studio School on 8 West 8th Street before March 10th to enjoy our current exhibition called The Worlds of Chuck Bowdish, which you can see a little bit of right behind me here. Bowdish was a Studio School alum, and he dedicated his life to pursuing art's most significant questions. And I think he would be truly delighted by the panel taking place tonight. So thank you all, and very much looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Cara. I'd also like to introduce Wright Harvey from the Sugarlift Gallery.
Yes, thank you, Jordan, so much for inviting me to be part of this panel. One of these ducks doesn't look like the other, and although I do have a background in painting, I can't say I paint at the same level of my esteemed colleagues on this panel. As Jordan mentioned, I'm the founder of Sugarlift Gallery. We're going to celebrate our 10-year anniversary this November. It'll be 10 years since our first exhibition in our first gallery space in East Williamsburg. You can find us today in Chelsea on right under the High Line between 27th and 28th Street. We're really excited to be part of the contemporary discourse. And what that means is, I really see our role as being a facilitator, getting to meet brilliant artists such as yourselves, and really thinking about how what you create is adding to the canon, is adding to what has been done before in a new and more interesting way. And I know John mentioned that this panel should be painting and relevance. He mentioned that at the end of the last panel. I missed the last one because I was at a Barclay Hendricks opening at the Frick, which is also amazing if you haven't seen it. But Jordan, maybe I could offer a precursor. Maybe the next panel should be, are galleries relevant today? because I think that's also not a yes or no question, but a very nuanced question. And I'd say if there's one thing that separates, my understanding of Sugarlift and our philosophy in terms of how we approach being a gallery, it's that we're really open-minded and we're thinking about, in a world that's changing so quickly, in an unknown future, what is the role of the gallery and how can it support artists? Ultimately, it's about nurturing a healthy artist community. So brilliant minds, like the minds on this panel, can come together, bash ideas into one another, and come up with the next most interesting thing. And that we can add to the, again, to, add to the canon, add to the importance of what visual arts has added to humanity. I'm really excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I will introduce everyone briefly. My name is Jordan Wolfson. I am a painter and a teacher. We're all painters and teachers on this panel, which is wonderful. And I live out in Colorado. Ruth Miller is, you're up in Washington Depot, and Ruth has been painting. How long have you been painting, Ruth?
Well, I'm 93 now, Jordan. I've been painting really, really passionately. I mean that since I was probably about 22 or 23. Can you do the math?
About 70 years.
Yes. Oh God, do I have anything to show for that?
Yes, absolutely. You just had this beautiful show at the New York Studio School. I flew in and it was fantastic.
It was lovely to see you there.
Just gorgeous. Ruth is here. John Lee's shows with the Betty Cunningham Gallery. He just had a show recently as well in the fall. And also painting for quite some time, if I got that right, John.
Oh, yes. Yes, I did start. I started very early. I mean, I started, painting as a child.
Oh, wow.
I mean, maybe everybody painted as a child, but I started.
Yes, I think so. Everybody painted as a child.
Yeah, but I sort of, I was very interested in as an attention getter, for one thing. And since I painted by myself a lot, in my room, because we moved around a lot,
And Ying Li is with us. She has a show currently at the Nada Galleries on East Broadway through the Alice Galvin projects, and it is going on through February 1st.
Thank you.
Eric Elliott. Eric is shows with a Zeuxis. Is it a cooperative? It's a group of still life painters, and is out in Grand Junction, Colorado, running their painting program, their art department. Clintel Steed is joining us, and he also currently has a show up at the Shrine Gallery through February 3rd. And Zoey Frank shows with the Sugarlift Gallery and is coming into New York to be part of another panel discussion on Thursday evening with coinciding with the show at the New York Academy of Art on Thursday, January 25th. So a few remarks about painting and relevance. For quite a number of years now, as we've been kind of hurtling into the 21st century, and all the craziness keeps on piling. keep on mulling over what exactly are we doing as painters in the face of everything going on. So I thought I'd just read a few things that I wrote down here, a few introductory remarks before we begin. It's a bit odd. It's a bit of an odd fit for us to talk about relevance. In a sense, it's not part of our job description, us being painters. Meaning, yes. As painters, our job is to find meaning in our work. And to do that, to do what we do, to make what we make as faithfully and deeply and meaningfully as possible. But relevance? Who's to say? Perhaps an art historian, perhaps an art critic, perhaps a social commentator, but for us as painters. And yet, if we do not feel that relevance with what we are doing, what we are giving our lives to, if we don't feel that it is somehow actually relevant, then how do we keep faith? How do we keep going? How do we dig deeply as if it really matters? So much indeed depends on the times we're in. Matisse and Picasso were giants, but the times they were in called for that. The meaning of pictorial language was of utmost importance and relevance. Today, amidst the deluge and cacophony of non-stop imagery, what is relevant?
Well,
there we go.
I remember we ended, I think John, was it John who said, does painting matter at the very end? John, you said just last time, and is it relevant? But I read what Zoey said recently.
Yeah.
You posted it, and I think it was for me it was very it was moving, Zoey, that you said great paintings remind you of what is good in us. Do you remember you said that?
Yeah.
That's a great statement. Great paintings remind us of what is good in us. And then I think you went on to say something like that you as a painter, that you had to take in all the immense information, all the immense visual information and stimulus. And through painting, through your painting and the progress of your painting, you discovered, or you found order. And I think that's very much it. I know, which might be irrelevant to what we're talking about now, but with me, when I feel the same thing about order and about unity, but when I go into my studio and close the door, I'm not thinking about all this incredible deluge of what's coming in, especially now with what's going on in our world.
Ruth, can you tilt your iPad slightly so we can see your face?
Oh, my face is gone.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay.
Also, can we have a image of Ruth's painting while she's talking? So
Mark showed us the tree there and some of the other still lifes. Yeah,
that would be great.
So Ruth, you were saying you when you go into the studio.
Yeah, I was saying that I really, when I shut the door in the studio, I'm shutting out also my contact or my awareness or all the information, all the stuff is coming in. And what am I facing? It's my work. And how can of course, I want to know if it has relevance. Of course, I think, does it have relevance? Could my dialogue with Cezanne and with Chardin have relevance? But I don't really, once I'm working, and I know all of you probably feel the same, that goes sort of out the window, and I'm just in a confrontation with the work and my dialogue with my painting. And I loved what Zoey said, that it's the good in us. Also, I think when we hope that we give something back through our communication or through the work, we hope we give something to the world that, not that we think of that when we're working, but there's this connection that it goes forward and backward. I have a dialogue with all the dead painters, and now that I'm so old, there's so many that even painters that I know and love now who are close to me have gone to the great studio in the sky. And I don't know, Jordan, I don't know how to address this really awesome question of what's relevant.
Well, let me ask you, do you ever feel, maybe you don't, that what you're doing doesn't matter?
Oh, I do think what I'm doing is matter because it matters to me.
And that's enough.
Well,
it matters to a lot of people.
I think I'm in a dialogue that is not just, there is a language that I'm, a conversation that goes forward and backward, Jordan.
Yes.
And it involves all of us, all of you,
Yes.
that I feel
Yes.
close to. But that's not where my mind is.
Right.
But it must be the same for all of you. When you're working, it's that work and what you can give to it.
Yeah.
And what it is asking of you. And you have to face that. This last weekend, I was brought into New York by friends of mine who came to pick me up and took me in, and I got to see Lois Dodd's paintings. And I've known Lois since the 50s, and we're friends. And I've loved her work for so long. And these exquisite concentrations on the subjects that she's painting, the pine cones, a tree, a branch, snow, night and clouds, aren't they relevant? Why are they relevant? They're very relevant to me. And I left feeling that I'd gotten closer to her vision, and I shared it.
Mm-hmm.
And her vision really, really mattered.
Mm-hmm.
It sustained me in my own quest, my own journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so it comes down to human beings and how we find each other and communicate. And I think that's what it's about. Not that all the things that are happening in the world, which I'm one of these people that watch the news all the time in the evenings. I'm a news, and I'm just absolutely devastated by the news. And I know that that the world that we live in is our world, right? It's where we are and what we navigate and what we address and what we are responsible for morally. And all that somehow is with us, even when we go into the studio. But I'd like to address that. I'd like to take that on and do something that might be relevant. But finally, I just humbly look at my still life and start some sort of connection with that. And hope it means something.
I just want to say something as you're saying that, because as you do watch the news or whatever, I'd heard a great jazz musician say that sometimes he was making music that would fight some of the energy that you might hear on the news. So if you guys could pull up that still life one more time, just so we could look at it. I think sometimes when you feel that confusion, you feel the pain, something of looking at the gourd, looking at the still life, looking at the apple, looking at just simple objects of the everyday, somehow that becomes more powerful. So I guess that thing of, oh, I could comment, it is a comment, because we all still, even though there's chaos, the mundane still exists, the quiet still exists. And to comment on that is valuable.
That's true.
Clintel, do you think it's just putting it out there is enough? Like just making it is enough counterbalance, making positive energy? At least that's what I'm picking up what you're throwing down. Like,
I mean, we have
creating this other energy out there in the world, does it balance the negative energy in some way, even if it's not seen in a gallery or something like that? Is the creating enough?
I think
That's a very good question.
I was just going to say, I think so, because I think the power of all of us, you know, this Zoom call or whatever, us talking about painting may not change the world, but us coming together for this time period is very powerful. So I don't think you have to worry. I just think sometimes you put out good. And I know for a fact, I'll walk away from this conversation a different person.
Ying, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I will follow, Ruth mentioned, Zoe's line about find the good in ourselves. I think, that's so true. But also, I think, in the painting, when you work on it, it's not only the goodness, there is I like to use the word, you just, the frustration and the complexity of how we, approach in the process. And, that reflect, all different kinds of feelings. And I think that feeling really connect to the viewer. It's us. I think a painting is a really mirror of us, and the language of painting is a human language, and that language, it's there. Just like you don't ask. We communicate. It's a way of communication. It's a way of to connect. I remember, when I came to this country, I didn't have much English, very little. And somehow I got into MFA at Parsons. I remember so clearly, Leland Bell, one of my teacher, every Friday he showed tons of slides, and he is a nonstop talker. He can talk. I didn't get what he was talking about, but those images just hit me one after the other. That kind of a connection. I think that's how we connect with each other, how we connect with the viewer who see the painting. I think in a way, the painting itself beyond beyond just a still life setting. That's it's what the paint can do, and it's a language. And always I feel, that language need to be promoted, to be recognized, and it's a powerful. It's who we are.
Yeah, Ying, to just jump in on your point, I had the opportunity to read a book over the holiday break that I highly recommend. The title is An Immense World by Ed Young. And he writes about, putting yourself into different animals and the way they sense and experience the world, and to try to imagine their consciousness. there was a groundbreaking study in the 70s that was titled, and I'm paraphrasing, what is it like to be a bat? And the really eye-opening thing for me was the realization, just like when you see a great painting that changes how you see the world, he made the point, as humans, we have different senses. When we're hungry and we smell a meal, maybe smell is a bigger sense. Or in some, okay, good night. My kids are going to sleep. But the vast majority of the information that comes into our brains is actually through our eyes. We almost think that they act in somewhat kind of balance or equilibrium, but it's really 90% of the information that comes in is visual. And when I read that, it became so obvious, but it hadn't been before that moment. And to tie that into relevance, there are also scientific studies on what promotes longevity. And to live a healthy life, really one of the main factors is how strong your relationships are with other people. Mm-hmm. So if our main source of information is visual, and you hear the point made that it's not what you say, it's sort of your posture and your body language that people pick up on. That's all visual language. And the visual arts, the way we absorb the world and process these ideas and put them onto canvas, it's another way of communicating how we've interpreted the world, what we want to say, how we want to exchange these ideas with one another, and ultimately how we want to form bonds with one another. So there's a little bit of like a scientific, it's not just an art, it's a science take on the question as well.
Can we go back to one of Ying's pieces, one of the bigger paintings, real quick? And if you could just talk about the process of that, I think it's kind of important. Yeah. This one, please. If you could just talk about that one.
I wanted to follow still, about this, relevance thing. I remember the first time I went to Dunhuang Caves, which is on the ancient Silk Road in West North China. And I walk into the cave, that time the cave still open, still could get in, now it's all closed, they made a duplicate, for people to see. Of course, it's not the real thing. I remember first time I walk into the cave and, kind of a worn out fresco on the wall. I did something I shouldn't do, but I did. I had my hands on the wall and give me chill. I feel the connection. I feel the activity, these people who put on the paint on the wall to make some kind of a image, the Buddhist art, most those are, that kind of a connection, that's human connection. That's nothing like that. And that just, stay with me forever. And another thing is, I remember I walked into a Leon Kossoff show. This was also a while ago. The elevator door opened, just this smell of paint, just right, right on your face. I thought, whoa, this is like I'm at home, and that's another connection. That's even before the image, but that's what it's like a prelude, of the show. And, that kind of thing, you don't get, you touch the screen of the computer. I don't get that feel of a connection. I can't smell anything here. And okay, back to this painting. It's one of the painting I worked for, through at least a couple of years. And I worked on, it's two totally separate panels, but pretty much related motif. Started with this, little fake Christmas tree with some ornament hanging on it. And I started during the pandemic when things closed. You just like, you totally feels you're locked out. And but somehow, that little fake tree sort of just got me going. And then I worked through, 2-3 years, and made tons of changes. At the time, my boyfriend and I, we locked down at Haverford campus, but I'm such a city girl, I grown up in Beijing, China, and I like, big noise, there was no noise, nothing. And, but when I work on this painting, I really think about the city. I think about the Central Park. I think about, what I missed, what I want to be. And so that, shot in the painting. And yeah, it's a, to me, painting is not just about what we see right there. It's about what we see can bring out of us. How I can make that connection and find a deeper meaning in what I look at. And this painting really is thick. And another thing about, what I really think a lot about my work, I like painting reflect nature, not just the motif, but really like the touch. And you see the tree bark, you feel the tree bark, and you feel the ancient wall. You feel things crumbled, you feel the earth, you feel the mud. I want all those in my painting. That's, I'm working on that. Yeah.
When I'm hearing you speak about your relationship to your work, or what the painting is for you, there's a sense I have, well, and in this, the way it's not only for you, the painting is functioning as a means of connection.
Yes.
That was your experience when you met painting. It's what your experience is when you make painting. There's something about painting that is about connection, human connection.
Totally. And I think, when we work on our, on the piece, we struggle. We try to find a way out. Also, we're curious, what could be. There are so many different ways could go. Sure. But how you make your choice, all those things reflect in the painting. It's just as complex as ourselves as human beings. I think when people see that, they feel that. I do feel they can feel connected, and maybe they got totally confused, but that's good, but there is a, curiosity, the curiosity of what's really going on. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was working on this painting on this, flower farm, mm-hmm. close to Mount Granite, where I was teaching a workshop. Mm-hmm. And I was painting this painting, and the two girls came in, they were dancing around, and finally they said to each other, and the big girl and the two sisters, obviously, and the bigger one just said, "What is she painting? What is she painting?" And the little one said, "She's painting rainbows." I thought I was, I just like a click to make rainbows color,
Yeah.
you know, and the energy, you know, the illusion, you know, I thought that was great. That really made my day. And
Jordan, can I ask you a question? Well, I'm sorry, Ying. I always butt in on people.
John, yes?
I'm sorry, Ying. It's a terrible habit I have. I'm like the Energizer, but bunny, and you know, well, shouldn't I be talking now?
It's fine. What is it?
Well, you know, it's so funny because I usually don't write lists about things like that. I mean, it's very funny about me bringing up the subject of relevance because I haven't questioned it since the early 70s when you know, and I went through, you know, a period of listening to a lot of people and I just wanted to run a couple of these things that I wrote down because this is so unlike me to come down with written things, and I was trying to do this, and it's so unlike me. And I feel kind of tongue-tied because I don't feel it's something I fought my way through. Now, one of the things that I really liked that I found a long time ago, I think it's by Georges Rouault, who I bring up a lot of times. He wrote, and this is paraphrased, what kept Western civilization alive during or at least in a state of hibernation during the Dark Ages? And he said, the prayers of the monks in the monasteries. A thing I put down, I liked your word that you used, Jordan, the phrase aesthetic niche, which I don't find negative. I think of what I've been doing as a painter kind of as a monastic activity. I don't know who it reaches. I wondered, these are things I've asked and questioned a lot. Why doesn't following people saying is painting relevant or painting is dead or painting is irrelevant? People don't ask, is drawing irrelevant? And during one of these things, I said, do people ever say, is the saxophone irrelevant? And sure enough, there was somebody there that said, I think the saxophone is irrelevant or the saxophone is dead. And I said to the woman that he came with, don't marry him, whatever you do.
Well, and
Question.
related to what you just said, does anyone ask, is prayer irrelevant?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, let me do this because I'm really I'm just feeling, you know, once I met a rather well-known rock star, and she was very lovely. Well, it was Deborah Harry. Okay, blonde. And when my response was like Ralph Cramden. Do you remember when he would get very nervous and he'd go, Hama. It's not like me to be like this. I'm kind of a blabbermouth, but I'm feeling that way here with these things I wrote down. That's why I just want to sort of say them and get them out of the way.
Okay.
Is it the function of critics and curators to give assignments to artists? I wondered, did this kind of come in with Clement Greenberg? I read a very negative article he wrote in his book about Georges Rouault. I never looked at him again. But people do talk about this. And I often have the idea that, I mean, when I've heard people coming, I'm talking about in the 70s, this time I had to get through, somebody said, oh, I'm painting. And the answer from this, oh, that's too bad. I told a person I'd known in high school, who became rather well known as an environmental artist. He said, what are you doing? I said, I was painting. Oh, just painting. Somebody else said it was a young curator from the LA County Museum in the early 70s talking to people at a school where I was teaching. And they were talking about painting. Nah, I just can't see it. And the last one, a rather well-known critic or writer was said to a painter, "You really shouldn't be painting." Okay, I lived through this. I'm not as old as Ruth, but I am 81 years old. So I'm talking about a period in the late 60s and the early 70s, and it seems so far away. I mean, people would talk about, they'd explain very patiently to you why painting was dead. There's edge, there's support, there's facture. We've been through that, and it's kind of finished. I mean, I can remember people, it makes me nostalgic for it, like this little period. I remember Avalanche magazine. And at the time I was thinking, oh, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could sit in my studio and smoke a cigarette and have people photograph me doing that. I went through all of those things. I think back on a long time. It's been a long time since the 60s. Do people now attitudes about progress? Do we still give the same credibility to the idea of credibility of progress, of technology in the time that we're following all these things that are going on, talking about climate change, all these other, I didn't write them down, but all the digital possibility that the wars may be cutting digital, closing down infrastructures that would stop people, couldn't get heat, couldn't get water, couldn't get transportation. Certainly they wouldn't be getting the computer. Did modernism parallel this idea of progress, this idea of things moving in a straight line, a linear direction, kind of like a relay race? Okay, Barnett Newman stripped it down to this. There's only one zip in it. Okay, he's going to give it to the next person. He got rid of the zip. It's
I don't think culturally we live with that kind of narrative anymore.
I don't either. That's
No,
what
we don't.
about people. I'm still carrying it in my head, and I don't hear anybody. I mean, as a teacher or what I see, I don't hear people being prey to this kind of thing.
No, we don't carry it that way. And so there really isn't any belief in the next big thing in the, no. I mean, your critics will say something like cutting edge or something, but
yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. And so it's in some ways, I mean, it gets back to these other pieces we've been talking about in terms of connection, reality, something deeper, when that shows up in, no matter what the form is, no matter what the medium is, if there's a deep sense of humanity, there it is. And that doesn't progress. That's just who we are.
Good.
So each of us,
I think I've been maybe talking about things that really are a long time ago. that led, I guess for me, led me to people like Carlo Carrà and Scipione, as well as Frank Auerbach and Milton Resnick, which all connected with Rouault. So, do you remember there was that Art Forum took out or did a page in the early 80s with larger print? And this was about the time that we were getting introduced to Schnabel and Anselm Kiefer and Zokuchi, and saying it was a kind of an admission that they were saying there might be some, I don't know if they said relevance, but it might make some kind of sense about painting. Maybe it shouldn't be written. It was treated like a professional issue.
Yeah, in terms of a progression, in the modernist sense of we're going to arrive at some, you know, I don't think we live there anymore culturally.
May
Any
I
of you
disagree, John and Jordan, may I disagree or provide a counterpoint from a different generation? I actually, well, first of all, John, as you didn't with Clement Greenberg, don't listen to the critics. I think that
I only do when they're nice to me.
I think relevance can almost be understood by the level of how zoomed in or zoomed out we are on something. And I think the further you zoom out, the more simplified the narrative has to be. And if you zoom out far enough, we hit cosmic insignificance, right? I think Ruth said the most profound thing right off the bat tonight, which is if you zoom all the way in, the most relevant is the work on the easel right in front of you. What I do want to say about the generation of artists today is they may not be pushing the boundaries of, the rectilinear canvas, or what is a painting, or breaking new big areas of territory like land art, or using machines to make art, or taking photographs of ourselves in compromising positions with our wives. But artists today, they have the benefit of learning from John's generation all the way back to the paintings that Ying saw on the cave wall. We have access to that information, and we also have new tools. It doesn't mean they're all going to create great work, but it does mean that we have the opportunity to experiment with new ways of translating ideas, new ways of presenting ideas, new ways of communicating ideas. Some of those, and probably a very small subset of those, are going to be relevant by using the definition of kind of sticking in that next branch of art history.
Good, very good.
They must have said things like that to you, Ruth. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Let me ask Eric, Zoey, do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share around relevance?
For me, I think of it as, to me, the relevance comes in the desire to create. And I don't see any like slowing down in the desire to create amongst my students. I think it comes with a certain level of purpose, like people seeking meaning and purpose in their life beyond, just a 9-to-5 job and coming and repeating the same thing over and over. People want something more to their life. And I feel like that creation gives them a feeling of meaning or purpose to their life, being part of a larger dialogue. And so like, with my students, they're still coming to me to teach painting. They're not like asking me to do digital painting or, there's no fear amongst me and my colleagues about the AI takeover, because it's about like that physicality, the coming in and making the thing, the meaning in the making that we talked about last time. And I think, what is the meaning in having a computer do it for you? So I think that, to me, painting's always going to be relevant as long as that desire to create is there. And if we go back throughout history, the desire to create's always been there. So yeah, that's what I have to say. Zoey?
Absolutely. Damn, Eric. Hallelujah. You said it. Don't you? Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Clintel, I want to hear what you want to say about that, because I know how passionate you are about painting. Speak.
Go ahead, Zoey. I think they wanted Zoey to
I go next. Okay. We both have to say things. So I loved Ying's kind of description of just like how much she was putting into that painting that she was working on, kind of like, you know, it starts with this little tree and then she's like thinking about the city and thinking about the mud and like just kind of all of these experiences that are going into the painting. And I guess I've been thinking about that a lot with my work lately of like, kind of in our world today that we're just like flooded with so much information, with visual kind of images and with news from around the world, which is really overwhelming. And that as a painter, like one of our jobs as a painter is to like take all of this stimulation when we're looking at a motif and bring order to it and bring and I think as a painter, I'm always wanting to find that order right away. But I've been trying to kind of find a process of painting that leaves it open and has this kind of a little bit more of a chaotic approach where I stay in that chaos, in that kind of more happening longer, so that I'm not solving the painting and finding order too soon. I feel like if I find that order right away or too soon, it ends up being this kind of simple version of order. And I'm trying to find a way to kind of create that structure, create form that can encompass a lot more complexity, that can hold a lot more, which is what I've been kind of struggling with in the studio lately, of this kind of internal struggle of like wanting to just like solve the painting and make it work, and then also wanting to, but wanting it to be able to encompass more. And when I think about, I guess that way of working feels kind of relevant to me in the world today. Of, you know, we have so much information coming in, and there aren't maybe simple solutions to some of the problems that we're facing in the world. And I'm trying to kind of be open to this way of working that can kind of reveal itself over time and have more complexity to it, rather than that kind of quick first thought solution. So that's something that I've been thinking about in the studio lately.
Can we pull up that last painting we had on the screen? I don't know who's driving. Yes.
Oh, that one blows me away.
So yeah, so you know, John, when we're talking about are there new relevant ideas, this painting by Zoey, we had the opportunity of having in the gallery for an extended show. It was about, I think, 2 months, and this might be my favorite painting, period.
It's beautiful painting, beautiful painting.
The reason for that is, you know, and I don't think it's going to be Zoey's best painting ever, because she's young and she has a long, you know, a long path to experiment and innovate and push herself. And I imagine she will continue to evolve in really compelling ways. But to me, this painting represents the best of young artists, in that you can see these moments where Zoey is a student of art history, and she's picked up all different ideas from, you know, I see some Donald Judd in here. I see some minimalism. I see some pop. I see some fleshy Rubens. You know, I see some early impressionism and different ways of thinking. You know, there's some Rauschenberg. It's like all these, you know, it's not derivative of any of them, but it's these flavors and these visual ingredients that we've learned that can kind of push and scratch our minds in different ways. And it's presented in such a new and exciting and just stunning way that, you know, I think this is one of, you know, probably a lot of examples of young artists who have absorbed the wisdom and are finding the way to take the next step. I love this painting so much. It just floors me every time I see it.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm certainly wanting to kind of pull from a lot of different, I'm like in love with so much of art history. And then also just, it feels like actually a really, I don't know, like a super alive time in painting. There's so many interesting, like just so much work that I love that's happening right now in painting. It feels just like an incredibly period of time right now, actually. So it's just a wonderful time to be doing this kind of work. Yeah. And I guess, and I guess Ruth was talking at the beginning about my comment about, yeah, just that like that painting can remind me what's good in us. I guess it feels like the world can feel really, really bleak at times, and really difficult. There's a lot of really challenging things going on right now. And just kind of coming that when I see great paintings or great art in general, it like reminds me of the good in us, and also that we're just like that people can be like open and curious and have just tremendous capacity, that we can like really make amazing things. It just feels like it's like it gives me hope in humanity, which is a little bit of a corny place to go, but it just feels like
It's
the
not corny at all.
The conversation continues.
but that great art is what just like gives me hope in our future in a very like.
I would add the word possibilities.
Yeah.
You know, the possibilities, and that there's so much can go into.
Yeah.
Yes.
It does.
Clintel, you wanted to say something earlier?
Wow, so many beautiful things. If we can just pull up that photo for me, that was pretty much kind of sum it up, you know, if I could talk about that photo for a minute, because a lot of this, to me, relevance, you know, we're all relevant. And I should have had this question a long time with Leo Steinberg when I was a guard at the Met, and I asked him if doing pop art was relevant. And he said, if you want to do pop art, go ahead. It's like, and so I'm paraphrasing, but basically he was saying, you make it relevant, because you being alive in itself is relevant. And for me,
right.
I just want to say, for me, with this Balthus and David Bowie moment, I first saw this in high school. I didn't know anything about painting, didn't even know who Balthus was. I knew who Bowie was. And it took me years to kind of find out the power of Balthus. But to me, painting has changed my life. And knowledge, the word wisdom just came up. And to me, people like Bowie and Balthus who walk this earth and are able to change us. And this makes me think about Van Gogh. Van Gogh, people know me as a teacher, but I gotta say it. Once I was able to see Van Gogh, I was never able to look at the sky the same way. I was never able to look at life the same way. So you realize that all this, us walking upright on this earth, on this planet, we are valid. We must do what we believe in. We must have faith in what we do, because it's beautiful and it helps us what is the word? I'm going to use this word. It may be cheesy, but I want to put out the word joy in this life. You know, when I found Balthus and Bowie at that moment in high school, it filled my brain with joy, because I said, my God, what is this? I had no understanding. So that about life is so powerful. It's so valid. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you mind if I posit a question from the audience?
Please.
The question, or it's more of a prompt, I'd love to hear folks talk about the difference between relatable and relevance. In other words, how to relate is to connect, and how to be relevant with content, topic, or material.
I had wrote something when we were talking, and I was sort of saying this, if this answers the question. One of the things I was saying, I wish we could get to a point where we don't have to have favorites. And I wish we could get to a point where we don't have to name things. And I think that's what the Balthus offered for me. You're talking about what makes me feel instead of what kind of controls. It's about how do I feel. So to me, so who cares? Just be you. And hopefully we make something that allows someone else to feel.
Yeah, it also can tell you what it's possible for you to do with your life. You know, I mean, this whole range of things, painting and sculpture and music and dance and movies. I mean, I'm one of those people that never walked out of the humanities. I mean, I wish I was broader in knowledge of science, of things like that, or do I? But anyway, I mean, it was something I could do with my life. Maybe I'm saying what you're saying, Clintel. You know, it was very early, I knew this.
Also, just back to Kara's question, and I think get to the material. How one approach within the material. I think it's such a personal thing, and how one dealing with the material. It's like it's you. It's your way to express yourself, and that way only the artist or the student can find out yourself through doing it, through trying, through use different things, and through also try to do the things opposite what you expected to do, the way you use material, and then you really find your niche, that particular voice. And we all learn so much, we have so many giants on our shoulders, and you can't undo that, but how you can go through them and find your way. I think that's really the most important.
Yeah, I'd have to agree in the sense that when I think about making something relatable, I think that you can't make work in that way. You have to make it for yourself. You have to be, honest to yourself. If you're trying to make it for somebody else, then it's just going to leave a bad taste in your mouth, and you're going to end up needing to change later anyway. So it's like I just try and tell my students to find their own voice and make it their way. And then they'll find the people, they'll find the niche, they'll find the people that like it and part of their group, as opposed to don't try and force it on. It's just not going to work.
Gary, if we're to take a literal answer to the question, but the difference between relating and relevance, to relate is an act. It's something that has to happen between, two or more entities. You think of a relationship between people, you think of a relational database of different nodes pointing to one another. Whereas to be relevant is a state of being. They're almost two totally different things. And to be relevant, again, it depends. It can depend on the context. It can depend on relevant to whom. It can depend on the moment. For instance, if I'm holding if a lemon is sitting on its own on a desert island, it's probably not that relevant. If I'm cooking and I need some acid and some, to brighten up my dish, it becomes a little bit more relevant. If I'm on, Magellan's ship circumnavigating the world in the middle of the Pacific, that lemon becomes extremely relevant. So same object, different context, different level of relevance.
I mean, I don't know, I think sometimes, you have to realize, I often think about this, because when you think about the gatherer, the hunters, we're using stones and we're using sticks. And even though when they find those burials, sometimes they find out how smart they were, how they felt about each other through their tattoos, or if they're carved in the bones. So I think that hunger, the human hunger, the species hunger to create, the need to create, regardless, it makes me think. That's what I wanted to talk about this, because I was also thinking about Akhenaten, the great guy who wanted to change from all the gods or multiple gods to one God. So it made me just think about, why is it sometimes that people walk and they want to do things? Where does that hunger come from? So that's, to me, it becomes relevant because we as a species need to see things. We need to eat. We need to be entertained, right? So I think sometimes you can't replace the idea of hunger. We're hungry to create. We love to see. We love to learn.
Also, I think the relevance, it's a really to whom. It's a personal thing. You know, I think, you know, I get students go to museum to look at the great stuff on the wall. I thought, wow, that is so relevant. You know, that is so damn important. And you can't get Donald Trump to hang Cezanne in his house, you know. So, you know, forget that part. You know, you can't, there are certain, you know, people you can't reach, you know, that's fine. You know,
I think for me though, what a lot of people don't realize, for me, when I was growing up as a kid and I would open up a history book, I would see certain images that made me feel a certain way. But then when I was able to look at paintings, and that's the thing, there's a difference. It's a different energy. So you might have energy coming from popular culture outside, but then you have David Bowie offering you something else. And without David Bowie, wow, the world's a bit colder in my view. You know what I'm saying? So, and so to even have a thing of relevance, it's like, I always love what Gustin said. There's something very mysterious, but as soon as you try to name it, it just leaves. But you know something deep, deep down inside your belly. When you look at that Monet, when you look at that painting, whatever it may be, whatever your favorite land art, computer art, whatever your title ism, when you get touched and you feel, yeah, you know you alive. And that's relevant, to know
Yes.
alive.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
So we do
Ca-
have,
Cara,
we do,
well,
sorry,
one second, excuse me. Card, are there, could you look through some of the questions? Perhaps there's a something else out there that we could all
Yeah,
take a look at?
yeah, there's another question I think is building off of a theme that everyone sort of touched upon, and I wonder, and also specifically what Clintel just talked about, which is, you know, what do you think distinguishes painting from other forms of art making, specifically when it comes to this question of relevance? You know, we sort of touched upon drawing, for example, and how discourses vary between drawing and painting, but what's the difference in the relevancy of painting to other media? Maybe that's an open enough question for everyone to weigh in with any final thoughts and take it where they want.
Yeah, that's a great question. Does anyone want to start with that?
yeah, Jordan, I'll kick it off. You know, I think it's interesting to study, you know, what Clintel was saying, like thinking about what's relevant to us, we can feel it. We can feel it in our soul. And one way is thinking about from our own experience, what's relevant. You know, another take on the word, on the idea is to think of our humanity as a collective being, you know, and how do we think about relevance as a humanity, as a society at a zoomed out level. And we all understand the basic frameworks, you know, specifically in the art world of how we think about relevance. As Ying mentioned earlier, when she takes her students to the Met, when you go to MoMA, you stand in front of the Barnett Newman, you go to the Met and you look into the eyes of a Rembrandt self-portrait. We know that these paintings are relevant to society because they've been through the giant filter, right? There's a lot of creation, there's a lot of noise, and through some complex system, we all vote to determine what is the most relevant. You know, to oversimplify in the art world, it's we're creating, and the better artists get into a group show in the Lower East Side, and then they get a solo show here and a group show there, and then a critic writes about them, and then they get their regional museum show, and eventually, you know, it culminates with the best artists showing up in the best collections. So I think that that's an understood process, but it's an imperfect process because we know at each stage it's not a democratic voting system. It's not everyone is heard. There are people with lovers of power who have influence, who may be being influenced, that can impact, who ends up, at the top of that pyramid. So I think even just studying how we agree collectively on what is relevant and how that machinery works, maybe that's a whole conversation in itself.
Yeah, that takes us.
Well, I mean, what I like about that is the idea of the collective humanity, because I mean, I think of in terms of like the relevance of painting to other medium. When I was a kid, comics books were what was relevant, not painting. I remember going to the museum and I couldn't care less about the landscapes and the big name artists that I was walking around and seeing. And then I remember also like the first time that I saw Morandi, I just didn't get it at all. And then like as I became a painter and learned more about art, now it's like I can't imagine the world without Morandi, and like my paintings wouldn't exist without Morandi. And so I don't know, there's a certain level of this collective knowledge and learning about these things. And like you're saying, the things that are passed down and handed on. I mean, yeah, maybe some things it isn't the most democratic way, but it's like, there is a certain level of the collective filter of us deciding what is amazing art and what sticks around and what influences us. And I don't know if that becomes through learning or through the making. Like, is it like, as I become a painter, I really appreciate those paintings more? But I mean, I know there's people that aren't painters that appreciate those paintings as much as I do, but I don't know. I guess I throw that out to you all in terms of like, where do you think that sits in terms of like us having to really learn and digest this artwork before it has a relevance to us?
I think there are two sides of this question. I think one hand, the world is so big. Nature is huge. Anything can be coexist, and there are so many ways to make art. I totally go for it. And then the other hand, as a painter, I just feel, things got pared down. You go into the museum or gallery, we still use the same language. We talk about the touch. We talk about, the brushwork, we talk about the surface, that's the same thing people talk, centuries ago. And so, that's so connected. And so there is one is horizontal and the one is kind of a vertical. I think it, can really exist, at the same time. I cannot think the world without painting, when the world gets to the end at this someday, then everything will be gone. But as long as there are humans, there is painting. I really do believe that. That's how we started, and that's who we are.
Yes, I think that's so. I think there's something about the urge to make handmade images, something about taking a flat surface and creating a world that we can move into, something about this object that is both two-dimensional and three-dimensional, that we have access to this way of being that moves to our core, gives us access to our core. That painting, because it's this weird thing that we make with our hands and it's flat, but we have a space, this impossible thing, I think it's magic.
I have a quote by Steinberg, if I could just read it, and then I'll be quiet for the rest of the night. But it's Steinberg famously said that anything anybody can do, painting does better. indicating his profound love and reverence for the visual arts' ability to not just reflect life, but to become life itself. And I think that is key. Doesn't matter what it is, if it's a movie, video, give it what it is, but does it make you feel alive?
Mm-hmm.
Is it alive? That thing, that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, guys.
We should end on that. That's deep. Indeed.
Something more powerful, I think, which I cannot do. Music is, that kind of a connection I really want to have in my work.
Well, this is visual music. You are a visual musician. You're a painter of symphonies. I've told you that.
Last night I went to hear Mingus Big Band playing at the drum.
Wow.
Man, that kind of a connection, and that is like wow,
Yeah.
I'm humble. That's I really think that kind of power is just unparalleled. Anyway,
All these connections.
yeah.
They're comforting and they're so meaningful, and their life itself.
Yeah, and that's who we are. Humans, can make all kinds of beautiful stuff, and we don't have to choose. I think it can just exist there.
I agree. I agree. Well,
Wonderful. Anyone have any last thoughts or offers or? Well, thank you all for joining us, and thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to the New York Studio School and to Sugarlift Gallery for hosting the panel discussion. And I look forward to being in touch with everybody, and keep on painting. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
thank you, Jordan. Thank you so much, Jordan.
Bye.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you. And if anyone's interested
Jordan.
in rewatching or sharing with your friends, a recording of this conversation will be posted to the New York Studio School's YouTube channel in the coming days. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Tara.
Have a great night.
Thanks, Jordan.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Tara.
Good to see you all again.
Great.